let's get this. Let's get this meeting underway. Thank you for joining. We have we have 8 people here in the room, and we have 12 online, excluding the board members. So all of the board is here. We have the 5 of us here, and then we have Dakota and Mike, who are remote. Mike's generously stayed away, although he's in Perry Park. He's recovering from COVID. You sounded pretty good, Mike. Are you feeling good?
I'm feeling a lot better today. I think it's behind me for the most part.
Well, thank you for keeping it to yourself there. Okay, so if we want to skip on to the first slide, the agenda, we'll call the meeting to order here. So we're going to go through, you've all seen the ballot recently, we'll announce the results of those, and then we're really going to focus, we're really going to focus on the bigger agenda items. What we cover every month. If you come to the board meeting, you'll see that every month we cover things department by department. So we're not going to cover that tonight. We're just going to cover the bigger, longer term items. All right. So if you want to skip on to the, actually, one reason we specifically did that was to allow the opportunity for member questions. So whatever questions you've got, we'll be glad to entertain those and answer those as best we can. So there's your board of directors. Again, I said we're all present. Dakota and Mike Colombo are online, and the rest of us are here in the room. We're actually two of these boards positions are retired this year. Myself and Gary, who stood in for 1 year for a previous board member who retired. So our 2 positions came open. Those were the 2 positions that were available through the election. So on to the election results. So I'm very pleased to announce Gary Willis is replacing himself. So good job. So we're delighted that Gary's rejoined, because quite frankly, he did half a job and he's got some work to do. Gary did a great job. He's going to talk about some of those things later in setting up a bunch of our strategic planning. So it's awesome that he's rejoining the board to actually turn that into a process rather than an event. So that's great. And also elected is Marvin McDaniel. And so I've talked with Marvin today. He's actually not able to join the call. He's traveling. But it's great to have Marvin on. He has some really good experience, which should be very valuable to us. I also talked this morning to Bob Loesch and Andy Allsmith, who got a bunch of votes, but not as many as Gary and Marvin, and we're very appreciative of them joining. I hope they continue to be involved actively in the type. So that was good news. That's all done. Next slide, please. The other thing that was on the ballot was some very minor changes to the bylaws. As you'll probably know, if you want to make any changes to the bylaws, we had to get the membership approval. And we did that. We achieved the quorum. I think we got 61% or something response, which wasn't awesome, but was fine. There was plenty. We only needed 50. And of those, 92% voted in favor of the bylaws change. So that was good. So that's done, and we'll update those, and the updated version will be posted online. So having dealt with those ballot things, I'm going to hand it over to Dan and Laurie to cover the important financial information.
Thanks, Ted. Actually, I'd like to start by, as far as thanking Lori Bachtel, who's our controller and does all of the heavy lifting as it relates to the financials around here, I assure you. Literally our financials run like clockwork. Month after month, everything is on time or early, and everything is dead on accurate. And I think not only me, but I think the whole board is very appreciative of her effort. So maybe if I can ask the people here to give her a thank you, and I appreciate it. I'm going to start with how we're doing so far year to date. These are our results through August 31st. We're just finalizing the September financials. And we hope to see this many people join us next week, and you can hear that exciting news as well. So I'll start off by saying, so we have a surplus year to date of 194,000. Okay, by the way, our budgeted surplus for the year is 110,000. Okay, and I get asked sometimes as far as like, wow, you know, in the past, some of our budgets have kind of budgeted, say, for a very modest surplus of say 20,000. Our approach is that, hey, we think we're pretty good, but we're not that precise. As far as I can tell you from being here 18 years, there's nothing members hate worse than in the second. Okay, we're required if we have an operating loss in any given year to assess the members. So like by budgeting for a surplus of a higher amount, honestly, it gives us a little bit more leeway in making that happen. And frankly, at all costs, avoiding in a second. Okay? So we do our forecast for the end of the year through the July financials, and our forecast, or I should say, Lori's forecast, told us that we at that point we projected a surplus at year end of 110K, and I'll say a few things about that. First off, is that we think that forecast is somewhat conservative. We actually had a very solid August after we did the forecast in above what our forecast was. So that was certainly good news, and so I think it's perhaps likely to be a little bit higher than 110. The second thing is, as far as like it's a logical question to ask, like, well, if you're at 194, what are you going to do to blow all that money in the last 4 months of the year? The answer is that we run out of profit during the heart of the golf season, and we run out of deficit in Q4. Okay, so what our more modest projection for the end of year surplus really just reflects the deficit we budget for running in the last really the last 2 months of the year. Okay. We've had a lot of good things. You can see on the left-hand side, if you look at it by department, we're actually to the good, but very, very close to budget, really across all of the departments. With a couple of notes on a couple of things. So membership has certainly been strong. Pro Shop, I give Keith and his team a ton of credit. Like, Keith had a tough ask this year. We completely did away with Tuesday to Thursday outside play. And that was at a cost of about $120,000 in revenue. And so for Keith to be in really close to his tough budget, I think is actually quite impressive. And then the next thing I'll comment on is food and beverage. Food and beverage, we were just, I think, at the end of May, $50,000 behind budget. Okay, so we anticipate some of that, but not that much. So as far as I think Chef Kevin and their teams have done a great job. And one of the things that we think we've done a good job in is managing one of our toughest challenges this year, which has been our cost of goods sold for food and beverage, like any restaurant that's out there right now. And just to give you a sense as to sort of how dramatic that's been, last year, our cost of goods sold for food and beverage was 47% of revenues. So far this year, it's 54% of revenues. So when you take a look at as far as like at the end of the year, the F&B will be about $1 million operation. That's real money. It's like $7,000. And so we think we've done a good job managing that as best we can. The second thing is, as far as it's from a challenge, but I think that we are doing a good job managing it, as well as is from a payroll standpoint. As far as we're fortunate to have a very good team here. And you know what, as far as when you have a real good team, you better be on your toes, as far as, because you're not the only one out there that think that they're a good team. And so we we spend a lot of time as far as like, are we competitive to what the market is today, or particularly for the key positions, and honestly making some of the adjustments as a result of that. Okay. as you can see, in the things that we have a little bit more control over, we've done a good job. The course maintenance, manor house, and administration are all under budget. Because keep in mind, those are all on the expense side of the ledger, they're all under budget for the year, okay? So the other thing I'll take just a second to talk about is, what do we do with the surplus at the end of the year? We really do three things. The first and probably most important is that we move a significant portion of it to the capital fund. You know, I'll talk about it in a couple slides. Mike Palmer will also talk about it as far as like, we essentially have 15 years of pent up demand for projects that are things to catch up around here. And so that'll be a significant portion. The second of it, if some of you will recall, we established a reserve fund last year with a portion of our surplus, first time we've ever had one. So we moved 40,000 of our 2021 surplus to that reserve fund, and we'll move a portion of our surplus this year as well. And that surplus is essentially put in place to offset any potential future operating loss. Okay. And then lastly, we'll keep a small portion of that any surplus in the operating fund, really just to give us a little bit more operating flexibility in 2023. Okay. Okay, so our next slide is really is the balance sheet. And you know, any of you that have been to board meetings, we subscribe to club benchmarking, which is like 1,000 different clubs that enables you to get great comparative data as to what they're doing and perhaps more importantly, how you are doing versus your peer clubs. Okay. And club benchmarking would tell you that growing the balance sheet or growing your equity on the balance sheet is one of the most important things a golf club can do. And really, honestly, from a board of directors standpoint, more focus should be on the balance sheet and a healthy balance sheet than the day-to-day operating results of the club. We've made a great deal of progress in this area. To give you a sense, for about 15 years straight, our total equity in the club hovered right around $2 million. As you can see at the in the first column at the end of 2020, it was 2.044 million. Okay. At the end of last year, it was 2.44 million, and right now we're at 2.937 million. Okay, and so we think it'll be a little lower than that than 2.93 at the end of the year, really just to reflect the operating deficit in Q4. But I think we've been successful as far as it's kind of like the simple formula for balance sheet, right? We've increased our asset base. At the same time, we've reduced our liabilities. And so specifically the key things driving that, just since the end of 2020, we've increased our fixed assets by over $500,000, which represents really all the investments that we've made in the club during that period. We're also making really steady progress against our long-term note payable, right? So that has gone down 110,000 since the end of 2020. And so in that balance, so what it was 620 is now 510. And now that we're further into that loan, I think we have roughly 4 years left on that. Obviously, as you get deeper into it, we're paying more principal every month instead of interest. And so we pay over we pay down that note by over $6K a month. Yeah. Okay, I got website. We'll go to the next slide. Okay, there's a lot of numbers up here, and I tried to highlight a few, so I'll focus on those. But I will take you to the bottom as far as, because that does tell you this is a model as far as so that it tells us how much money are we going to have in our capital fund to pay for investments that we're making in the club. And keep in mind, we have two big things going on right now. We have the 18 practice swing project, and then in January we have the HVAC project. Okay, so and you'll see at the bottom It tells you as far as, so at the, actually, I'll take the start of the second column. At the end of this year, we'll have 205,000, and you'll see, and I'll explain a little bit more in a second. At the end of, it actually, I think should say January, June next year, we have under 20,000 in there, and I'll talk about that in a second. And then we finish 2023 with 165,000 in there. Okay, so I'll highlight what are the key things that impact this. Okay, the first one is the incoming capital fund fee. Okay, I started off last year's annual meeting presentation by thanking the members as far as for approving the increase to $150 per month. I really should have started this year by thanking the members again, because honestly, it has done more to change the financial trajectory of this club than anything that we've done. Okay. So as you can see, we take in ballpark, close to $500,000 every 6 months in that, or I'm sorry, every year in that we take in about 45,000 a month in capital fees. Okay. So that's the first highlighted line. The second one that comes into it is the initiation fees. And thanks to Lana selling a ton of memberships this year, that has been a healthy part of it. And by the way, the other thing that we've shifted the last 2 or 3 years, for many years here, out of necessity, not out of choice, when we sold for our initiation fees, went straight to the operating fund. That's why we weren't able to invest in anything, because we needed the initiation fee to go in the operating fund and stay afloat. Okay, we have the luxury now as far as we're in a much better position. And now in 2022, we moved 2/3 of the net initiation fees into the capital fund, and you see that represented on that line. Okay, and we hope to move a higher percentage of that in 2023. Okay, next, so we also have to pay. So I talked about what's coming in. Let's talk about the big ticket items of things going out. First off, the 18-home renovation. We still have several payments to make on that. You see that there. The third shaded line down there, and then we have the HVAC system. By the way, we have a healthy contingency built in, so maybe that'll be a little bit less than that. But that'll be a one-time lump sum of $330,000 that we got to pay probably next February of next year. Okay. When after we pay that.
One with the collie on it.
Hold on.
Oh, hold on. Wait a second, Lori. Okay. Were you able to? Okay. After we pay that $330,000, for the time being, we're going to be capped out. Okay, because keep in mind, we have a couple of big checks to write for as we complete the Practice 818 project, and we'll just cut a check for over $300,000 for HVAC, which means so that for a short period of time, we borrow from our line of credit. We borrow $115,000 in March or April, and however, we turn around and pay that back in the early fall, September, October. And then finally, the last thing I'll note on this is that we also allocate $75,000 a year just for miscellaneous things, particularly here in the Manor House, things that happen that we have to replace, and typically we have to do it on short notice. Okay, we think this model is pretty conservative, so we're going to keep in mind we're going to fund and pay for these investments that we're making in cash, which is what we've done the last 2 years. We're not the line of credit. It's a short-term thing for 3 or 4 months. We also think our model is very conservative. These what you see on the incoming capital dues, that's based on a full member equivalent count of 270. As of October 1st, we have 286, 16 above that. In addition to that, in the fall, we run that special where Lana recruits a bunch of new members. They don't start paying dues till April of the following year. We already have 7 of those in the till, and more to come. Right, Lana? So we have now, and I say that's good news though, is because keep in mind this time of year is our season of the highest resignation period as well, kind of like from October through February. Okay, So, however, even if we were to even be above our budget number of resignations, given where we count with that, where we are going to count today, and with what we call the zeros that start paying us in April of next year, we're still weighted a good. Okay, so we think that's one reason why it's conservative. We have $40,000 in here that we have modeled to move from our surplus to the capital fund, probably like in January of next year, the end of January. We actually think we'll move more of that. As I said, I think our surplus will be a little bit higher. It'll be split between 3 ways. The bulk of it though will go to the capital fund, so that'll be a little bit higher. And finally, you know, our progress, not only physically, but as far as financially, on our 18 practice stream project is going very good. Jason and Mike and that team, we built in a very healthy contingency into that project. We've spent very little of our contingency. We think we're going to be able to pocket a significant portion of that contingency of that. Okay. Okay. So we'll go to the next slide, and then I'll stop boring you with financials. Now, this slide is a little bit wonky, I admit. However, it serves a really good purpose of it, and Mike Plumbo will talk a little bit more about sort of what we're doing here in just a couple of minutes. Basically, we track this to measure how worn out and tired is our asset base here at Perry Park, right? And so as you can see at the end of last year, I'll ask you to focus on the top bar there that shows on the left-hand side assets depleted, bad. On the right-hand side, assets pressure, which means that you're constantly reinvesting in your assets, good. Okay, we want to move to the right. Okay, we're making a lot of progress in this. The technical, this measure basically says the current value of our assets divided by the original value. So essentially, you're taking out your accumulated depreciation over all those years. And so if it's when it's really low, it basically says you're not replacing your assets. Okay. And so things are going to start to deteriorate. Things are going to break down, including some things that are critical to the daily function of the club. And so we're making progress. We have more to do. And the LRP team and our staff is spending a lot of time studying all of our assets as far as how do we plan and replace these in a proactive manner and pay with them with cash. Okay. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mike.
Well, let me just make a point there. So thank you very much for that. So this is a really great graph to transition to Mike Plumbo to talk about what we're doing with long range planning. So as you can see, Dan's already explained how we've moved from a not great position towards the medium, which is really good. And you guys keep on hearing about us talking about our successful financial performance. Well, what we asked Mike to do is explain what our long range planning team are doing on catching up on the 15 years of doing nothing much that Dan mentioned before. So Mike, I'll hand over to you, and if you want to explain what you're doing with LRP, the projects, and the process that you're going through.
And obviously, I'll be happy to answer any questions about any of those shows at the end. So.
Thanks, Ted. Thanks, Dan. Good summary so far. Dan mentioned more than once that these projections and financials are conservative, and they really are. We have taken an approach that says we don't want to overstate our position, and we want to be sure that anything that we take on, we are able to accomplish successfully in the best interest of the membership as a whole. So we've got some really strong financial numbers, the best I've ever seen them since I've been in the club for almost 3 decades now. We also need to be sure that we invest our money wisely going forward. And in order to do that, we've really created a very structured, disciplined approach to how we take projects on and when we do them. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking to you about the process, because I'm not sure everybody knows and understands how that happens. But so quick overview. The club has a backlog list tracking more than 60 potential projects, with additional projects being added on a regular basis. Seems like we're always coming up with something new that is needed and important for the club. Many of the projects have been on the list for over 20 years. Dan and Ted said 15. It's actually more than 20 years for some of these projects. It's been a long time that we've had the needs, but not the funds to do it. In 2021, the membership approved an increase in the capital funding fee to $150 a month. That was huge. That was the game changer for Perry Park Country Club. It has made a huge difference so far and will go forward. This, coupled with growth of membership by nearly 50% in the past couple of years, provides us with more than $500,000 annually to complete numerous needed projects. Projects include, course and equipment improvements that have been delayed for many years and waiting funding. Many of the clubhouse fixtures, furnishings, and equipment have outlived their useful life. Grounds surrounding the clubhouse require a strategic evaluation and some upgrades. And so in order to do all that, we're looking at implementing a master plan study that will help us evaluate all the needs on the course and be sure that whatever we do going forward is consistent and complementary to each other. We don't want to go in and do a project today and then have to come back and tear out something that we've already done to do a project in the future. So it's a fairly comprehensive, structured approach going forward. Next slide. Okay, so just talking about how the long-range planning committee is managed, it really, as you saw on that first slide about who's represented there, we have strong representation from the department heads, from all of the committees, from the board, and then if there's other projects that are wanting to be considered, members have the right to go through the committees to make recommendations on projects they might want to be considered. So the way we do it is department heads create a data sheet, submittal that they submit to long-range planning. It includes information about the project, just the scope, the urgency of the project, a budget if they have one, a schedule if they have one, and any other available information that they may be able to put together. Oftentimes, department heads may not understand all of what it takes, and then we're available to work with them to help evaluate and understand some of these, the information needed to help evaluate these. Each request is then reviewed and evaluated as appropriate and assigned a priority ranking. We have really 5 major categories. We have the emergency projects that need to be done right away, high priorities that we believe are important to get done as quickly as possible. Then the asset maintenance and replacement program that you heard Dan talk about earlier in his graphic slide, existing program enhancements, and then new programs. So every project that comes in through the data sheet submittals gets ranked in one of these categories. We then continue to meet regularly with finance to discuss priorities and evaluate available funds and cash flow for when the timing might be right for specific projects. We continue to work with the managers and committees to determine highest priorities and evolving conditions and needs that change, because as time goes on, something we might have thought was a high priority 6 months ago may not be as high a priority because something else has stepped in front of it, such as maybe some work in the pump house that we had to do recently. So it's a constantly evolving process that we work together. Now, all projects in excess of $2,500 requires the manager to get board approval through what we call an AFE, or an authorization for expenditure. It's a request that's submitted, a fair amount of information is included in it. The board then votes on it. So any project over $2,500 gets board approval. Projects in excess of $100,000, the board solicits member approval. So we actually go out and take about a 30-day process and have the members vote on those projects. Routine projects are then directed by the managers. The managers themselves actually implement those projects. For larger and complex projects, the Long Range Planning Committee provides project management support to the managers. Again, the managers still manage the project, but we can provide a little bit more expertise and support to them. Excuse me. Then upon completion of the projects, we do a lessons learned review to be sure that anything that we did, if we could have done it better, we talk about it and we make sure we implement processes going forward to be sure we're constantly driving improvement in the process. So that's a quick discussion about the overview and how we manage these projects. The next slide is just a representative list of projects. It does not, first of all, represent all the projects. As I said, there's over 60 total. And it doesn't necessarily represent the projects in order. It's just a sampling. The practice complex and 18th hole alignment is underway. Kitchen HVAC will be performed in January. A master plan study, we're looking at proposals now. And based on the cost and the information we get based on proposals from professionals, we'll decide whether and how we may want to go forward with that master plan study. Still yet to be determined if we're going to do it, but we need more information. There's some required dam repairs that the state dictates to us. We have no choice. We have to do them. And Jason and his team is working hard on those projects. The men's locker restroom facility next to the pro shop, we've had one stall out of commission for several months, and we need to go in there and figure out whether we do just the bare minimum fix or whether we take the time to do this right, and make sure that it's something that is going to be for quite some time. Pump house equipment, a lot of that is 20+ years old and needs to be updated. And we're talking about whether we do a structured plan that says we set aside certain funds every year for the next 3 or 4 years so we can go out and do the project without taking a big hit out of 1 year's budget. Cart pass, we know that we need to finish the cart pass. On-course Wi-Fi, it's under study. Is there a way of doing it? We've talked about it for years, and there may be some solutions that may work. Kitchen equipment upgrades, we need to replace quite a bit of equipment. Bunker renovations, the 18th or the 12th hole green upgrade, clubhouse window replacement. That's just a partial list. We have a much longer list. And as a group with the committees, the folks representing the committees, we have a lot of people working hard on making sure that what we do going forward is going to be done wisely and we spend our money appropriately, just to continue to make the club a better place and a great place for members to participate. I think that's it.
Got a couple of illustrations here, Mike. Mike.
Yeah, I went to mute and I came back out. So this is just the 18th hole, phase 1, which is basically complete. And it's looking in pretty good shape. If any of you have been out there, I think we're going to realize if you stand in the number 1 tee box and look down, it looks like the green is kind of small. It is not. It is deceiving. I think once we get up there and play it, and I think that Jason and his team did a tremendous job of making sure there's going to be lots of locations for the pins to be placed on these greens. And I cheated and I snuck out there today and I stayed away from everybody, but I took a look around too at what's going on in phase 2. And they're in the swing of things. And Jason is working very closely with the architect and the contractor, and they're shaping this area here. And again, I think standing out in the fairway, probably about 150 or 160 yards out, it's going to look much the way it does on hole number 4, where you'll be able to see the pin, but you won't be able to see the hole itself. So is that it? We have any more?
No, you're good, Mike. Thank you very much for that.
Thanks.
So Mike just explained our long-range planning process, just a sample set of the projects that we have on the very long list. Obviously, we have to make decisions and decide between different things, and to do that in a vacuum or to do that every time and just think about things is clearly not a structured way to do that. So we have a strategic plan in place and a planning process, which helps us make all those decisions and decide what we need to focus on. So Gary has done an incredible amount of work this year. He's been supported by the team for sure, but he's led this and driven this. And right, his phone doesn't ring. He's going to take that. It's great that he's elected. He's going to take that forward and really turn that into a process this year. But or does it take some time here for Gary to explain what he's done, what our strategic plan is, and what the plan is going forward?
I appreciate it, Ted. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for the election results. I look forward to being able to help out a few more years and maybe put this into a process. This process of strategic planning is only possible when we have a strong management team that can help us focus on the day-to-day operations and help us run our operations so that the board and the management team then gets a chance to look to the future. You can see from the expertise of our financial planning, the expertise that we have in the club for long-range planning, makes this a much simpler process because we have the skills and the talent, the management team to help put this together. What we've lacked, and it's been identified many years, is that we are focused mostly on the 1 year because we've had to survive. Now that the members have said, hey, we're going to support you a little bit longer with more capital investment, has really led to this ability to build a strategic plan. In this case, this year, the board was our strategic planning committee. It's not normal for a lot of organizations. They kind of set that aside and then come to the board, but in this case, the board got involved and all the members have taken a piece to put this together. I've been able to help orchestrate it, but having a very willing team to do that. So I just want to go through the annual strategic plan was approved by the board at the last board meeting, and it is now published on the website for you to look at. And it's a pretty long document, but there's pieces that you can get directly to what you're interested in. So I'll talk a little bit on this first slide, is we took a long look at what had been done before. Our bylaws require us to do planning. Historically, the boards have said we want to do this on an annual basis to update it. So we looked at how do you do it. And a pretty common tool is you look at your processes, see what you have in place. You see if you have people that are responsible for those, implementing them. And we look if we have the right skill set, knowledge, tools to do that. And then we continue to review it. And that's the planning process many companies use and one that has worked well for us, I think. So we'll go through a little bit of that. Next slide. So some of the early wins that as we started through the process, is we've looked at all of our governance documents, and there were a ton of them in all kinds of forums in the board, in the membership, in the committees, and the management team have reviewed all the governance documents, and they've all been updated, which was quite a bit of task for everybody to pull them together. We're supposed to do that on an annual basis, so annually we can review and catch up and see if we have any gaps. We are much more aligned now. It's more informal, but now it's much more formal that a management team, we really count on them to run our day-to-day operations and to manage that. That allows the board and the committees to review and revise, or review, advise the team. The committees will advise and recommend, and the board is accountable to approve any changes on our strategies and approval on our policies. So we're really clear on the roles, and we've rolled that out through all committees. We've identified some gaps in our tools, some of our systems. We have some great talent that we've brought on in the last few years to implement the strategies. We're really dependent on having good talent. We do have good talent in our members. A lot of them are participating in the committees to help us roll this out. So this is really critical as owners of the club that we participate. Bring your talents. We need those talents to actually accomplish these strategic goals and to make our club a tagline I've been using is we really want to be a highly successful club for the long term. We can do that if we all work together to do this. And then we have set up a set of key performance measures for us to routinely look at monthly, quarterly, yearly, to see what our progress and make adjustments to our plan. Kind of typical planning. Next. So some of our key challenges, this is great to get started as an initiative. Much as Ted said, we need a process. We need this is the way we operate. It really starts with, as we change out board members every 3 years, we have a whole new board. And we need inductions. Not all board members have gotten inductions. We don't know the history. A lot of times we go back to the people who've been here, the Don Armors, the Bill Rileys, those that have had a lot of history, and we ask, well, what happened? We've captured a lot of that information from them. We're putting it into inductions into new board members so that they have a chance to catch up with the history and build upon that. As Mike talked about, we're at a place where we recognize we need some resources to develop a master plan. We need some expertise to be competitive with the market. And we need to look at how do we build these master plans so that we are actually planning for the 5 to 10 years out where we want to be, our vision. We also, who knew about a pandemic 2 years ago? There's other risks out there to the club, and we've been out identifying what some of those are, documenting what the risks are, what our challenges will be, and see if we are prepared for some of those. As our demographics in our area change, some will be better for our club. And then we could have some environmental challenges that just the environment, the economy, things change. We want to be prepared for some of those risks with our eyes open. Again, I'll emphasize we need members involved and their talent for sustaining these efforts. The boards and committees can't do it alone, but all of us working together, we can. This has been rolled out, the really 4 real pillars that we've tried to keep it very simple. There's and put into here. The exclusive membership is we have a membership cap around 300. We're at that. We want to sustain that. We want to create waiting lists to keep that full. That's our revenue. That's what really brings the success of our club, makes it possible. And so that's a key pillar for us, is the type of membership and full membership. The amazing experience is when we offer a service to our users, our members, and our guests, we want them to be completely satisfied with that service, be it a golf course, be it a banquet, if it's whatever service we're offering, if it's a food and beverage, we want people walking away saying that's what I want. We also want the members and the owners to say, this is something else we'd like to have. We can look at that. That goes into our experience because this is our club. And that's where we really want to know that we're delivering the service that the members want. As Dan has expressed, we want the members confident in the financial management. You're providing monthly fees, you're providing dues, capital investment, and we want you to know that you're confident in the way we're spending your money and that we're spending it in the right direction, and we have good responsibilities for that. So that's a key pillar. And the fourth one is one, partially because of our structure, we need to have good governance. We need to have consistency in the governance going forward. So this is not a one-time effort. It is a process, and it's sustainable. So when the board members go off, we have new board members, new committees, they've got the history, and we just keep on building. We're not starting over every year with new board members and without the history. So that's kind of the framework. It's set out there. We've documented the assumptions we've made. We've documented what each of the objectives and the initiatives for each of those to accomplish them. And that's where we want to start again this year. With the board is, this is where we need to start. Or do we need to make any changes? And that's, hopefully this is an evergreen process. But we put the bones in place. Now we just need to continue to work on it. And that's the effort the board's made this last year. And that's what we look forward to kind of implementing with your support going forward.
And that's all available on the VPC website.
It's all been it was published yesterday, the strategic plan, so if you want the longer list of projects, Mike's put them out there. If you want any more information here, or if that more you want to know, it's still out there.
And of course, it's out there to be reviewed and commented on, so if you guys have got any thoughts, any things that are missed or that are wrong that you'd like to see added, then any of the board members will be able to help you discuss that. And I have a question, sorry.
Yes, not wrong. You're doing a fabulous job. I love you talking about all the risks and planning ahead. The thing I didn't understand from looking at the pending projects, and you're saying some of the site now, strategic plan is water. The water rights and whether you're using the, back in ancient history, we were full members back in 2004, moved away and moved back now. But back in the day, it was all virgin water on the golf course, and the wastewater treatment plant, I think, has kind of expanded. So I keep wondering whether you can save money on that big line item of operating expense of the golf course by doing something like using wastewater and, you know, helping to increase the value of the water rights by making more of that really pure water available. Or is there no water issue? You're just flushing water or?
Actually, so it's interesting you bring that up. We had a call on that yesterday, and it's a complicated subject, as you probably already know. So Jason's probably our closest to an expert, although it could be a full-time job. So do you want to comment on that real quick,
There's
Jason?
nothing more key to our long-term value
Yeah.
and viability of the club and the whole Fair Park experience than water.
So Jason, do you want to comment on two things? First thing is the water rights. Second thing is about the whole pumping infrastructure, how we get our water out onto the course, because that's another big interesting subject.
Right, so Perry Park Country Club owns Conduit Reservoir. Okay, and that water is what's considered stormwater or water that comes in off of the mountain, off of this 6,000 acre, this 6,000 acre watershed that comes to this property. Perry Park does not own all of the water for Conduit. And they have water storage rights, not water rights. This is super complex. But to simplify things, we would need it would be actually an additional expense with an additional pump station to incorporate reclaimed water into our irrigation system. And then there would be also a lot of other environmental evaluations and concerns and implications to taking that reclaimed water and let's say storing that either on site, because I don't believe we would ever be able to add that into the existing infrastructure or our storage of the Conduit Reservoir, as it's just too many liabilities with that and some extra jurisdiction and or building another pond. And to be able to build another pond, you have to have those rights and shifting those around. So hopefully that gives you a little insight and answers one half of the question. The second part of it is our irrigation source is Wakanda. It does come from storm runoff, and we do pump directly out of that. And the infrastructure associated with that is getting up to 20 years old, where we do have some components that have potentially exceeded their useful life expectancy. They still operate and function, but we just want to be proactive in letting the membership know as the owners that this is something we have to look at investing in the future.
Isn't there a trend in golf course management towards using wastewater because it saves on some of the fertilizer and that kind of stuff?
That yes and no. That could be looked at two different ways. Where you have an infrastructure already in place, yes, there are a lot of large municipalities that produce high volumes of reclaimed water for reuse. I don't know the specifics of Perry Park Water and Sanitation, but I would tell you that they probably do not produce enough to 100% support the water use at Perry Park. And there are a lot of other negatives to the quality of that water that you're using, because it does come with additional fertility and nitrates, which actually causes and can cause more turf problems.
We actually have, we have two members of the golf club who are on the water. So we have an inside line. Even though we need to pull some strings or find some information.
Are the rights that you're describing, the use rights, separate than what Perry Park Water and Sanitation water rights are?
Yes.
Okay. Right, I have a second check. I don't think I have any more questions online. No, no more questions online. All right, so so it was great. So thank you for that, Gary. Thank you for the water answer. It is an important subject, and particularly the I know the pumping and the irrigation system is under very careful review, and that's if it wasn't on the list, it was only because it wasn't randomly picked by mine. So that's an extremely important subject. So I just want to round this out before we go to questions. Most of these have probably been covered, but a list of major accomplishments which the club has made this year. And I say the club because it's the board of directors have found some, the members have voted on it, and in particular our management team and their teams have executed. So a lot of thanks due to everyone here. I will start off by saying that the increase in capital dues, which we mentioned a couple of times, went up to 150 a month. I think it was a couple of years back now, and that had 90+% support on the vote. So that was really good. It's kind of created a virtuous cycle for us, which is an awesome place to be. So the investments we make have made the club more attractive, and things as simple as the parking lot. You know, that was the first thing we did, and get rid of all the potholes and the mess that was. But the investments make the club more attractive, and that increased attractiveness has brought in more members. More members mean initiation fees and dues, and that enables us to circle that back and make more investments. So it's wonderful to be in this virtuous cycle. We're not, I should add that we have a deliberate cap on membership because we're very comfortable with the course as it is today and the number of people who can play on it. We feel that it's a capacity. We don't want people fighting over tee times and being able to get out there. But we're in a really, really good place. So just to go through the accomplishments. So membership, you know, a lot of credit, almost all the credit here is due to Lana, although I did put in a good word for you with one. So we're at 198 full memberships. We were at 182 last year. So we've had 29 new members recruited, full members recruited by Lana this year. Junior, we're 29 versus 26, and of course some of the 26 from last year got old and became full members. And there were 7 of those new in 2022. And the social was a huge increase. Which is partly attributable to the stuff that Chef and Kevin do here. We went up from 134 to 176, so that's really great for membership. And of course, membership is the lifeblood of the club here. Grounds and Greens, which is Jason and his team. So you've already seen pictures, and of course you've been out there and seen. We had that project that's underway, and it's 25 to 30% complete now, and I guess we'll get up to 50% pretty quickly here with work on the fairway of new 18. And I think many of you here play out in the course, but the number of times I've heard that the course is in the best condition ever, I think is a tribute to what Jason and his guys have done in a lot of little things. You know, like I'd always point people to the area just in front of the 11th green, which used to be kind of like a dog racing track, you know, where there was mud and it was horrible, and put drainage in there and grass, and it looks absolutely beautiful now. So that's awesome. F&B, so Chef here and Kevin, who's out keeping people happy out there, which is great. Done two remarkable things this year. One is we reduced the prices. You know, when we looked at what other clubs were doing, we realized that the best way to run F&B was as an amenity for the members. You know, we're not trying to make money out of F&B, at least not from the members. We just make it something there. It's there for your use. It's there for your pleasure. And so we actually reduced some prices because this is an issue here was fighting against inflation, which I know Chef has had some very serious inflation issues with our produce. But what's really great is we see that in the number of covers, that's the number of people who come in to the restaurant has increased by almost 20% on last year, which I think is a real credit to these guys at providing good service, good quality food at good prices. So that's another great thing. On the governance side, credit to Gary here for driving this. You know, Gary's very generously given thanks to everybody else for helping him through this, but there's no doubt that he drove through this and he has a particular set of skills to do this really well. Refresh all the policies. Boy, there were so many. It took 3 months to find them all in the first place. But if you look out on the website, I think there's 5 links out there. And we also have the strategic plan, which is really important. So that was awesome. On the finance side, you know, come back to that virtuous cycle here. We're in a very much healthier position. Dan touched on the point that we had 3-4 years back that all the initiation fees were going straight to operating, which is not a great place to be. So we make great strides now with Laurie managing all this. And in fact, we have a capital fund balance of $365,000, and we have a reserve fund, which we didn't before, of $40,000 now, and probably going to be increased. And the key of the reserve fund is kind of an anti-assessment fund, right? It should help protect us from having to do that. And lastly, the work that Keith in particular did, and those of you who are here over the last winter will recognize that he's only just got over smelling the fumes of the paint he had. That, you know, you're still on it. I thought you were looking happy. He spent all winter. In fact, if you talk, I actually saw the guys painting the fence out there, and I told them they should recruit Keith. He spent. I hadn't thought that was how he was going to do it. I thought we were going to get people in there, but he was in there all winter, all the time it was snowing, refreshing that area downstairs, removing things that covered the window, setting that hole in. The layout all up, which looks awesome now, and getting a bunch of new merchandise in, which I think has been really good. You know, not necessarily well-known lines, but very good high quality stuff for those of you who bought it, and I bought a ton, believe me. The other thing which was great, which we've been looking for years and years, was having membership prices. So I think, unless you compare to what you can buy secondhand on eBay, I think you'll find the prices down there are as good as you can get anywhere. So that was the whole point is, you know, if you're a member here and you want something, you shouldn't need to go look elsewhere. So if he doesn't have in what you want, then ask, and I'm sure he'll be able to figure that out. And again, you know, the key measure of that is what happened, what was the result of that, and the revenue was up 21%. So that's really great. And I deliberately didn't communicate the profit figure there, because we're not after making a profit there. Well, we are from guests. You know, it's awesome on Mondays when they come in and buy stuff, and they pay the full prices. For our members, it's a service we want to provide our members. We obviously have to cover our costs. So I think that increase of 21% is an indication of a great job that Keith has done, and the fact that members have responded by buying more stuff. So that's a pretty astounding list of accomplishments. You know, and thank you for your part in participating more strongly in those things. Okay, and that was all I had. I think we have questions if anybody has one. Boy, we have nothing. Nothing. That's awesome. Okay, all right, great. Well, so let me skip on. So, we have I've listed the new board here, Dan, Mike and Kelly, who both served 2 years. So this is their third and last year. Dakota and Mike are online, have done 1 year each, although Dakota did a standing year, so she's on 2, so they have a couple of years to run on their terms. And then newly elected Gary and Marvin, who have 3-year terms. So we'll figure out the assignments and the officer appointments. That's the first order of business for the executive committee meeting. And those will get announced at the board meeting, which is next Tuesday, the 18th at 5 o'clock. And if nobody has anything else,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I've only been here for 3 months, but I'd like to thank Ted for what he's done at this club. Everybody's here. Give him a- You get a lot of flack for his service, but I'll buy you a wine or a beer when you get done.
that's way better.
Very much.
Thanks.
Okay, and so thanks everybody for coming in. Thanks everybody online for joining. I'll formally adjourn this meeting. We don't need a motion to do that.
We adjourn.
All right. All in favor?
Approved.
All right. Approved.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Ted.